trusted best friend with a place to stay after hearing her story about abuse, but discovered she was faking everything and telling everyone I was hurting her so she could get sympathy and make me look like a terrible person. It's odd the way guilt can curl up in your chest even when you know in your heart of hearts you did nothing wrong. I still recall that night I sat in my kitchen, looking at the place setting across the table where she always sat each morning, swaddled in my worn hoodie, drinking the coffee I brewed for her. It's been over a year now, but sometimes I still expect to hear her footsteps in the hallway, the soft creak of the floor outside my door, like some part of me still believes she's here, like my mind hasn't accepted how badly I was played. It's difficult to talk about this, and the thing is, I held it in for so long because it made me feel stupid, used, and maybe worse, as though I were guilty in my own betrayal. She came into my life when I was gradually starting to be okay again. I'd just gotten out of a long, abusive relationship and was rebuilding, not my life, but trust with others. She was a college friend. Not really close at the moment, but known. We'd connected on social media one day, just random comments and likes at first, and then the next thing I knew, we were talking late into the evening about everything: life, work, family, regrets. There was something comforting about her. She had this gift of making me believe that she got it, that she knew what the mess inside my head was like without me needing to tell her. She told me things that broke my heart: growing up in an abusive home, her father punching out her mother in front of her, how she would lock herself inside closets just so she would feel safe. She told me that her ex-boyfriend used to shout at her for hours, destroy her phone, and once actually threw her out into the dark in her bare feet. I sat with tears running down my face and wondered, how did he do this to her? She was soft-spoken, sweet, always willing to assist others. She seemed so fragile but brave to have been through all that. So when she told me she needed to have some place to stay for a few weeks, to get back on her feet, I didn't even hesitate. I had a bedroom guest room. I had space. I had plenty to give. And I wanted to be the kind of person who gave. I didn't want her to be alone in the world. So I had her come over, to bring what she had, and not have to pay rent, or electricity, or anything. Just take care of yourself, I told her. Get better. We did all right for a few months. Made dinner together, watched old movies, giggled about stupid stuff till midnight. She'd leave little pieces of paper sometimes, thank yous, poems, drawings. I started to believe that I did have a sister, someone I could trust, someone who cared. And I guess that's why what happened hit so hard. Because when it all came crashing down, it didn't just hurt like she lied, it hurt like she reached inside of me and broke something I was only just starting to put back together. It started with little things. I'd return from work and stuff would be gone: my favorite coffee mug, a shirt that I hadn't washed in months since the last time I removed it, my Bluetooth. She always had a reason. Oh, I took that to work, was going to take it home. I spilled something and tossed it in the wash at the laundromat. I didn't question her. I mean, why would I? Then the whoppers started. She said she worked at a bookstore but somehow spent all of her time at home. She explained to me later that she was freelancing as a graphic designer, and asked me why I never caught her sitting at her desk working on anything remotely work-related. I wrote it off. Maybe she was struggling. Healing's messy. And then one afternoon, a friend of mine, who didn't really even know her that well, texted me and said, "Hey, I think you should know what she's been saying about you." My stomach did a flip. I asked them what they were talking about. They said she'd been telling them that I was controlling, that I was following her everywhere she went, that I demanded rent, and threatened to kick her out when she couldn't afford it. I was stunned. I mean, I was the one who gave her a place. I never asked her for a cent. I even stocked her up with groceries. I even gave her gas money when she complained that her car broke down. I thought at first, no, there's some kind of miscommunication. So I talked to her calmly and told her what I'd heard. She didn't even blink. Simply glared at me and stated, "People spin. You know how rumors start." But there was an edge to her voice. Cold, practiced. And I couldn't unsee the warning signs anymore that I had brushed aside. The way she always had some fresh story of a traumatic event, always exactly when she messed up or got busted for lying. The way she guilt-tripped me into doing things by threatening to compare me to her abuser ex, if I didn't. And then the worst of all, A message from a girl that I didn't even know, sent to my social media inbox. It was a girl who had lived with her many years prior. She said, "I don't know if you'll believe me, but I went through the exact same thing." She arrived, reported being abused. I empathized with her, accommodated her, fed her, the works. Then she started getting folks to believe that I was emotionally abusing her, started stealing things that did not belong to her, and then when I finally booted her out, she cried to all about how mean I was. The floor had been pulled out from beneath me. My hand shook as I read the message. I sat there, my heart pounding, wondering, what if it was all a fabrication? What if all the tales, the bruises I once witnessed, the tears, it was all an act? I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think that someone would fake something so heinous, so painful. But as more and more victims came forward, 1, then 2, then 5, I saw that I wasn't alone. She had done it to others before. She had a habit. And I had walked right into it. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I sat there in the blackness, just staring at the sickly light of my phone screen, reading over every message, every warning, every word from everyone who'd endured the same terror that I was only just beginning to know. My head kept racing back through all the times that she'd cried on me, all the times that I'd believed her when she'd said she was safe at last, all the quiet mornings that we'd sat out on the kitchen table with me scrambling eggs and toast because I'd believed she needed some sort of stability in her life. I started to question if any of it had ever occurred. If she'd ever really been scared. Did she actually have a mean ex-boyfriend, or was he just another one she'd manipulated until he had no choice but to push her out of his life too? That's what hurt. That I had let my house, my heart, my trust, thinking I was doing something kind for someone who was recovering, and that now I felt like a complete moron. But it was more than that about being lied to. It was the breach of faith, the way she employed my sympathies, my generosity, to her advantage, a pawn in a game I was unaware I was playing. I demanded explanation. Resolution. Something. So I sat her down the following morning at the breakfast table, heart racing within my chest, hands clenched around my coffee cup. I asked her again. Not kindly this time. Not softly. Why did you tell people that I was abusing you? Her eyes blazed. For a moment, just a moment, she looked afraid. But then she changed. She leaned back in her chair, arms folded, voice firm. I never said that. My mouth went dry. I saw the messages, I said quietly. I read the entries. I got the messages from people you have done this to before. Stop doing that. There was this massive silence. And then she laughed. I swear to God, I swear she laughed. Like this little puff of air, this small scoff, like I was the one who was ridiculous. You think you're a saint? She said, cocking her head to one side. You think you didn't try to control me? I didn't feel safe here. I just stood there, completely surprised. I wanted to scream, to throw the table against the wall, to demand how she could twist it all that much. But I managed to eke out only, I gave you everything. And she shrugged. I never asked you to. Those words tormented me. Torment me still. Because they were true. She never begged. Never pleaded. She just spoke her stories and waited. Waited for me to give. Waited for me to open the door wide enough so she could come in and start taking. Made me sick. Hands were shaking under the table. I knew I couldn't let her stay another day. Not after that. So I told her she had 2 days to pack up and leave. That I wasn't going to fight, that I wasn't going to argue, but that she was going to have to leave. Her reply? Ice-cold silence. She didn't cry or beg. She just got up and walked out of the room as if I was a hotel manager telling a guest that their room was out of season. And for the next 2 days, we lived in that thick, silent tension. She'd barely said a word to me. I avoided being at home as much as I could, just cruising around with nowhere to go or sitting in my car with the motor off, attempting to rationalize what had happened. I couldn't help thinking about the way she used to laugh at me, the way she said she felt protected here, the nights she told me things nobody else was said to know. I remembered having held her during the period when she would have been faking panic attacks. Yes, I now believe they were all pretense. And having made tea for her when she kept saying she couldn't sleep. It was all a joke, a cruel one, and I was the punchline. When she left on the day she didn't bid me farewell. She left a note, one single sheet of paper neatly folded up on the kitchen table. I stood there staring at it for hours before even opening it. It contained, "I hope someday you see why I had to do what I did." That was all. No apology. No explanation. Just more manipulation. More vagueness designed to make me second-guess myself. For weeks after she left, I barely even spoke to anyone. I was ashamed, even though I had done nothing wrong. I couldn't help but think, what if the individuals believed her? What if all that she'd been saying behind my back was still on the minds of those who never heard anything from my mouth itself? That was a fear that loomed over me like an anchor that I was unable to budge. I even thought about reaching out to people, telling them my side of the story, clearing my name. But I did not. Because deep within, I knew it didn't matter what I would have done. The ones that knew me, the ones that truly knew the heart of mine, they would not believe I had done the things that she accused me of. And the others? They didn't matter. But such clarity comes only with time. For a long time, I existed in replay. I blamed myself at all times. Could I have seen the signs earlier? Was there a sign that I had missed? Was I naive? Was I just desperate to be needed? And the answer to all of that is yes. Yes, I was trying to be needed. Yes, I wanted to help. Yes, I ignored my own discomfort because I didn't want to come off as cruel or heartless. And yes, I got played because I chose to lead with empathy instead of caution. But that does not mean I'm the villain. It makes me human. And if I'm honest, I'd probably help someone again. But this time, I'd trust my instincts. This time, I'd be able to tell the difference between someone who hurts and someone who's just stalking the next easy score. I started seeing a therapist not long after she left. I needed to sort it all out, work through the guilt, the betrayal, the anger. My therapist assisted me in understanding just how deep this hurt was, not necessarily because of her, but because of the way it unearthed old habits, old hurts from my past. I learned to establish boundaries. How to say no without feeling guilty. How to be kind without losing myself. And gradually, very gradually, I began to feel whole once more. I began sleeping through the night. I began to trust myself more. I started letting go. That part's still in progress. Undefined, but I'm getting there. What surprised me the most over the course of the next several months wasn't how mad I was. It was how alone it left me. There is something isolating about being betrayed by somebody you trusted to that extent, especially when it happens quietly, out of reach, behind doors where nobody else sees it. I kept trying to explain the situation to a few close friends, but it always became complicated. I'd start and about halfway through I'd exhaust myself because I didn't even know how to make it make sense to me. She just made everything up, I'd tell them. She lied about who she was. About everything. And they'd nod, and maybe they even believed me, but I could see the confusion there. Because to everyone outside, she was sweet, kind, broken, but harmless. That was how she operated. She didn't leave shattered windows or welts behind her. She left confusion. Ambiguity. A version of herself that was somehow not at all reflective of what she had done. I started thinking that maybe that was the worst of everything. That even when she was gone, she still managed to have me all messed up in my head. I would walk past the guest room and get this tightening feeling in my chest. Every so often, I'd find little things, pony ties, an old notebook, the perfume still on the closet rod, and it would hit me all over again. How much space she took up without ever quite deserving it. How much of myself I gave her without asking questions. I had always believed I had good instincts. As one capable of reading people, as one capable of knowing when something wasn't quite right. And that destroyed that confidence in me. That led me to doubt not just her, but me. All of the decisions I'd made during the time she was staying with me suddenly came into question in the rearview mirror. Every yes I had spoken out of kindness seemed a mistake. Every boundary I hadn't set seemed to be proof that I had it coming. I know better now that that's not so. But I couldn't see it then. I had the feeling I'd invited a stranger into my home and handed her the keys to my peace, and she'd used it to burn me to ashes from the inside out. And the worst part? She's likely doing it again. To somebody else. Somewhere else. That tormented me more than I'd care to acknowledge. I found myself wondering, how many more will she hurt before someone stops her? I considered calling the police once, just to report the manipulation, the lying, the smear campaign, but what do I say? Hello, this woman faked abuse and exploited my goodness. That's not what the police handle. That's not something you can demonstrate was a crime. That's an emotional hit and run, and the damage still stays inside. I even considered reaching out to some of the people she deceived, sending them screenshots, messages from others who had the truth. But again, I stopped myself. Not because I wasn't desperate to clear my name. I was. Horribly. But because I knew I didn't owe them that. The truth was no longer mine to chase. It was theirs to find if they desired it. And if they did, then I had to let go of that. That was the hardest lesson of them all, how to let go of the apology you'll never be given, the justice that might never be done. How to understand that sometimes people won't perceive the truth, not because it's been hidden, but because it's easier to believe the falsehood. And still, despite all of it, there were days when I missed her. Isn't that stupid? After all the manipulation, the treachery, the cynicism, there were times when I'd have a song we used to sing in the car running through my head, or I'd be cooking a dish she once loved, and this grief would hit me like a punch in the ribs. Not because I'd miss her, exactly. But because I'd miss what I thought she was. I'd miss the connection I'd assumed we had. The person she became in my head. That one never was. But the grief for it was real. It took a while, more time than I expected, for that grief to change into something else. Not closure really, but understanding. I realized that what was done to me had nothing to do with her. It was about how easily pain can be used as ammunition. How sympathy can be manipulated. How one can learn to survive by becoming the very thing that injured them first, and then lecture the world when it won't cooperate. I think she was broken. I truly do. But being broken doesn't justify breaking others. That's where the line is. And she crossed it over and over. There were days I felt like I hated her. I won't lie about that. Days I regretted responding to her text message. Never would have opened that door. But now when I think of her, I no longer feel angry. I feel distance. Like she's just this blurry picture in the rearview mirror. A painful lesson to learn, but one I'll never forget. I've learned to be more careful since then. Not closed off, but more guarded. Don't ignore the red flags anymore. I don't let guilt persuade me from setting boundaries. And I don't assume everyone who cries is genuine. That doesn't make me cold. It makes me smart. There's a difference. And I wish I'd discovered it sooner. But maybe that's just maturing. We all want to think that we're safe if we're kind to people. That if we treat people kindly, they'll treat us kindly in return. But the world doesn't always play fair. Sometimes it gives you someone who keeps taking and taking until you have nothing left to give. And then when you do stand up and tell them to stop, they turn it into a sword to strike at you. I weathered that. Barely some days. But I did. And I'm all the better for it. It's strange, but what kept me going was not some great revelation or a moment of catharsis. It was routine. Basic, ordinary, mundane things that made me realize I still had a grip on my own life. Being able to brew coffee in the morning without first inquiring if anyone else desired any. Folding laundry when the house was quiet. Sleeping without worrying if I'd wake up to another whispery phone call she'd answer in the hall at 2 a.m., telling me it was her therapist. For weeks, I had not had any idea how much space she took up, not just physically, but in my mind. Every decision I made while she was here had been filtered by her. Every weekend outing, every grocery list, every dollar I spent. And I hadn't even noticed it was occurring. That's what manipulation's like, I guess. It's not always loud or obnoxious. Sometimes it's just this general bleaching away of your own voice, your own instincts, until one day you're creeping around in your own home and you don't even know why. There were still moments where I'd catch myself apologizing for her. I'd think, perhaps she didn't mean to deceive. Perhaps she's had too much. But then I'd remember how she looked at me when I accused her. Fear. Guilt. None of those. Only calculation. As if she were already setting up pieces for the next game. Thinking about it would bring me back to reality. Because the truth is, even if you've been injured, that doesn't give you the right to injure. Pain does not forgive destruction. It does not forgive betrayal. And sympathy is not equatable with an acceptance of abuse. especially emotional abuse, which is what she inflicted on me. I started talking more openly about it, not on the internet, not on the street, but with those closest to me. And every time I explained the entire thing to someone, they'd pause and continue by saying something like, "That's what happened to my cousin," or "My roommate had something just like that happen to her." And I realized just how pervasive this is. How many individuals like her slip through the cracks because their damage presents itself as innocence. Because we're always told to believe victims, and we should. But nobody's talking about the ones who lie and say they're a victim, who make money off trauma, who roll up their sleeves to show you a scar that doesn't exist so they can get your sympathy in a house for free. That ain't most people. But it does happen. And it's heartbreaking when it does. One of the hardest parts was forgiving myself. That took longer than anything else. Because once the dust had settled and she was away from me, I was left to deal with the decisions I made. Opening up to her so readily. Disregarding the warning signs and signals. Not questioning her when I should have. Not establishing limits when she tested them. And the reality is, part of me wished for her to like me. I had to be seen as the good one, the safe one, the one who plugged up all the gaps that life had sliced out of her. It's a distorted kind of savior complex, but it exists. I believe that most people fall prey to it. We want to be the one that fixes somebody. We want to be the one they speak about years from now, like they saved me. But that's not love. That's not real friendship. That's codependency in disguise and calling itself kindness. And it will drain life from you until you're nothing. I started journaling in a journal, not even intentionally to begin with. Just things, random thoughts, on a pad of paper next to my bed. Itty-bitty things such as, "Don't ignore the gut feeling," or "Kindness shouldn't hurt." And as time passed, little scribbles were a map out of the mess. They took me to discover pieces of myself I'd traded too hastily. And I think that's the sly magic of healing. It isn't always grand statements and massive epiphanies. It can be as simple as not responding to a text from someone who bothers you. It can be as simple as muting someone who makes your chest do a cringing vice. Sometimes it's coming home to an empty apartment and not lonely, but at peace. I don't miss her anymore. I don't even wonder where she is, or who she's with now, or what story she's telling. She's not in my life, and she never will be again. And while I can never get back the time or energy that was lost, I did receive something else, something that I didn't know I needed. I received clarity. I received strength. I received this profound, unshakable feeling of what it means to stand up for my own peace. To say no. To listen to my instincts. And maybe most importantly, to never again let guilt override instinct. Because guilt is what she used to silence me before. Guilt is what made me doubt myself. And now I don't live like that anymore. I've retaken my space, not alone physically, but emotionally. My home is mine again. My head is no longer cluttered with her voice. I laugh more. I sleep better. I feel safer. It's not perfect. I still cringe at times when someone tells a tragic story too soon. I still find it difficult to provide assistance, scanning the horizon for danger signs. But I think that's okay. That's growing up. That's the price of learning, and I am prepared to pay it. Because I now know the cost of ignoring the truth. I know how easily empathy can be exploited. And I know how quickly trust can turn into a weapon if it is left with the wrong individual. But despite all of that, I haven't become bitter. I haven't shut myself off. I still believe in kindness. I still believe in helping people. I just do it with open eyes now. And if a person doesn't like where I set boundaries, that's not my issue, it's theirs. I've already been burned. That fire taught me more than any friendship ever taught me. And now I stand up for what's mine, my time, my peace, my home, and my heart. No more apologies for that. There was a moment, months after everything broke, when I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and barely recognized myself, but not in the sense that you're imagining. It wasn't grief that I saw anymore. It wasn't confusion or exhaustion or that dull ache behind my eyes that had haunted me for weeks like a ghost. What I saw was peace, quiet strength. A version of me that I hadn't yet met. Someone who had walked through fire, blindly at first, and come out the other side not unscarred, but awake. Awake to how far manipulation can go. Awake to how much you can give before you finally learn to say no. And aware, above all, of how long healing takes, not just from heartbreak or betrayal, but from the betrayal of your own instincts. That was the part that nobody warned me about. How it lingers, even after the person is gone. You start to doubt things that used to be concrete. You wonder if you can still trust your own instincts to read people, to choose who is welcome into your space. For a while, I held people at arm's length. Not cold, just careful. I didn't let anyone get too close. If someone asked too many personal questions too soon, I'd find a way to step back. If anyone wanted anything, I'd pause, ask myself if I really wanted to give it, or if I just thought I ought to. That pause saved me. Because before her, I didn't have that. I acted on feeling. On guilt. On this hole in me that thought that if I gave enough, people would stay. People would be nice. But not everyone is nice. And not everyone who cries is in pain. Some people learn early on that if you play victim long enough, the world lowers its defenses. And they wield that like a weapon. They learn to pull just hard enough on your empathy without snapping the thread. They guilt you into their healing, their comfort, their survival. But that's not friendship. That's not love. That's control. And I am never going to fall for that again. I've come to accept that I will probably never have the entirety of the truth. I'll never know how much of what she told me was true, how much was borrowed from someone else's trauma, or how much was totally made up. And it doesn't even matter now. Because the issue isn't what she did. It's what I learned from it. I learned to listen to the small voice in my belly that told me something was off, even when I did not wish to listen. I learned that boundaries don't make you nasty, they keep you safe. And I learned that real kindness doesn't leave you depleted, drained. It doesn't leave you feeling guilty for saying no. It does not come with strings attached or hidden agendas when you try to reclaim your space. Genuine kindness is quiet, steady, mutual. It builds you up instead of breaking you down. I see now that I was not weak for having tried to save her. I was not dumb. I was not blind. I was human. I saw someone who appeared to be hurting and I responded with compassion. That's not something to regret. That's something to be protected, clung to, because the world needs more of it, just not blindly. The thing is, I still help people. I still give when I can. I still show up. But now I ask more questions. I listen for patterns. I look for actions instead of words. And when something doesn't feel right, I walk away. No more second chances for people who prove they can't be trusted. No more excuses for behavior that drains me. I've made peace with what happened. I've stopped blaming myself. And that's been the real freedom, realizing that forgiveness doesn't mean inviting someone back in. It means letting go of their grip on your thoughts. It means recognizing that you were hurt, but not choosing to hold on to that hurt anymore. It's about closing the door behind them without leaving it open in case they come back. I do not want her back. Not even if she apologized. Not even if she told me everything. Because what she broke was more than the lies. It permeated into how I saw the world, how I saw myself. And getting over that was too expensive for me to be willing to do a second time. So I changed. I did small things. I made new memories in the same home she once lived in. I painted the guest room a different color. Got new curtains. Rearranged the furniture so it no longer looked the same. It worked. Not since I was trying to erase the past, but because I needed the space to feel like mine again. And slowly it did. That room didn't feel haunted anymore. That chapter started to feel closed. Every now and then, her name still comes up. Someone will mention it in conversation or say, "Hey, whatever happened to?" And I just smile gently and say, "She moved on." So did I. That's all that needs to be said. Because the details don't matter anymore. What does is that I made it through to the other side. Wiser. Stronger. More intact. I share this story not because I need pity, and not because I require validation, but because I know I'm not alone. I know there are others who've opened their doors and hearts to someone who wasn't worthy of it. Who've been questioning themselves after someone twisted their goodness into something they could take advantage of. And to those people, I just want to say, it's not your fault. Being kind to someone is not a mistake. Loving people, trusting them, showing up for them, that's not vulnerability. That's strength. And it requires even more strength to walk away when you realize that love is not being returned, that trust has been violated. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to rebuild without taking the wreckage someone else left you. I did. And I am fine now. More than fine. I am whole. I am solid. And I will never again apologize for choosing peace over drama, truth over lies, and self-respect over another human being's manipulative concept of love.